shall have a consent. Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, part two. A lot of you've already been on, so you've heard what we're up to with our goings on this past year with putting out webinars now for educational purposes and trying to reach farther out than just the Denver area, which we are happily doing with Zoom. And so today I'm like super excited about coordinating with Compassion and Choices. They are an amazing organization. Hopefully most of you know about Compassion and Choices. They are a national organization that they're responsible for the legislation that's happening state by state. And there's various ways they get the laws enacted, but state by state, they're making medical aid in dying accessible to the population in the United States. So Katie Sue, are we at 10 states plus DC?
Correct, we are.
Okay. And so they do a lot of other good work too. They have an amazing website that you can check out. It's compassionandchoices.org, and all one word. And so Katie Sue is going to walk us through one particular aspect of that website that I think is especially valuable. Katie Sue Van Valkenburg is an end-of-life medical social worker and a hospice worker. She's currently working in hospice. She's also worked as a life transitions coordinator for nursing homes, specializing in care for those with dementia, and as a social worker within an oncology infusion clinic. She's fueled by the passion to help others feel empowered at end of life, regardless of disease progression or cognitive status. She can be found talking about death on the ski lifts of Colorado or whilst walking her corgi, Henry Butters, who apparently is present in the room.
Hopefully he doesn't make an appearance.
Katie Sue, and then after Katie Sue, she's going to speak to us about the dementia tool that's available on the Compassion and Choices website. It's really a great way to kind of walk through the process of knowing how you would even want to approach a dementia directive. And let me sidestep just to address dementia directives in general. Dementia is obviously, for most of us, one of our top concerns, if not the top concern about aging, that we're going to end up with our bodies outliving our minds. And so there are various dementia directives available throughout the country. A couple of states have their own specific ones. Washington, DC, New York State have specific dementia directives. Colorado does not. But the dementia directive is an excellent adjunct to add to your suite of advanced directives as direction to your family as to how you would want your treatment to go or not treatment to go if you have dementia. It is not a legally binding document. It's not drafted by an attorney necessarily. It's something that you can do on your own and or with someone who is familiar with the dementia directives, or you can write up just your own thoughts about how you would want things to go if you had to end up in the course of dementia. So I highly recommend considering adding this document to your advanced directive suite. And this tool that Katie Sue is going to walk you through will actually end up in a version of a dementia directive, step by step. And then after she speaks about that, Kim Mooney, who just popped on, hi Kim. She's going to speak to you about medical aid in dying. Medical aid in dying, unfortunately, is not available to someone who has dementia. So we're hitting both, paths of aging. And Kim has founded her own business called Practically Dying. After working 22 years in hospice and other end-of-life organizations at national, state, and local levels, she's been working with Colorado's medical aid in dying efforts since our law passed, which was about 4.5 years ago. and believes that the choices we have at the end of our lives should reflect the values we've lived by throughout our lives. Although passionate about helping people become less afraid of dying and death, she says she's still fun at parties. And I will concur with that. So I'm going to turn over the screen to Katie Sue and take it away. And I'm going to close my door.
Away. Ta-da! Let's present, shall we? So hi, I'm Katie Sue. Thank you so much for having Kim and I here today. We are really excited. We are both very passionate volunteers for Compassionate Choices and honored to be in this group. We're going to be talking about the dementia tool, priorities tool that we have available on our website for free, and touching on medical aid and dying in Colorado. Just as an aside, since I wrote that biography for Miss Sue, I actually got a new job. I am now the medical aid and dying coordinator for Denver Health. So happy to answer questions later on if there are specifics for that. Luckily, Sue already touched on this, Compassionate Choices. We are the largest and most active nonprofit for dealing with end of life and improving care. We are all about being patient-centered with informed decisions. Our bread and butter is lobbying, educating, and creating tools to make it easier to implement your wishes. Medical aid and dying is a big part of what we do, but there's a lot of other facets, as y'all know, to the end of life experience. We're going to touch a little bit about dementia. I have a feeling this group is fairly aware of what the dementia diagnosis is, but I just want to give us a good little base. It's a group of symptoms that progress over time. People with dementia have a variety of struggles with thinking, memory, reasoning. It's a gradual disease, which is really hard. I know for the patient and for the families, there can be changes in personality, behavior, and it's typically defined in 7 stages. I like to remind people that dementia is an umbrella. There's a lot of different types of dementia. There's more than just Alzheimer's, which is the most common. But dementia is any kind of memory loss, even if it's temporary. So someone that may have temporary memory loss related to a stroke, it can be defined as dementia, which I think is important to know so it's not so scary. If you or a loved one are in a scenario in the hospital or wherever, to know that there's a variety of dementias. They're not all going to follow the same path. It's important to know that you can't diagnose dementia until after you've passed away. There are a lot of good indicators to suggest which type you may have. I'm not going to read through this slide, just want to give you again an overview. They're the 7 stages, and I like to categorize them in early, middle, and late. Early is when we should be planning. So this is where the tool that I'm about to share with y'all should be used. As y'all know, with dementia, it's going to get progressively worse. So the minute you get that diagnosis, you want to make sure you're making a clear plan. In the middle stages, that's where it starts to get pretty rough and tumble. Usually people need full-time caregivers, and it's only going to become more burdensome. That's why it's so important today to make sure that you're filling out your dementia tools so that you feel prepared to offer this to your loved one. Planning. We love charting. I think that's why you're all on this call. Y'all love talking about end of life and being prepared and being the captain of your own ship. So I'm just going to nail it in even harder that we need to be proactive. None of us are getting out of this life alive, and we want to make sure that we get to do that the way we want. I may seem as if I'm a little bit of a young buck in this field. I'm just very passionate about it. 2 years ago, I almost lost my own life pretty suddenly. And as a 29-year-old, that was really shocking to be like, wow, I am not invincible. And if I had died that day, my family has no idea what I want. They would have no idea how to celebrate me, what my priorities are, any of that. They could guess, but that's not really fair to them. So the best gift you can give to your family is clear wishes. Have those hard conversations. If you need a good, let's talk about death, Katie Sue's your gal. I love having hard conversations with people that may not be willing to talk about it. You also are encouraged to talk to your doctor. Make sure your doctor knows your wishes too. They are very helpful in conversations where you might not be able to talk, and your doctor is one that your family will probably listen to. So make sure your doc knows what you are hoping for as well. So let's talk about the Dementia Values and Priority tool. This is one of those very easy gifts that you can give your family. This is incredible. It's online, and we're going to walk through it today. It'll be compiled at the end into a full provision to be added to your already existing advanced directive. So with that, let's check it out. So we're always going to start off going to the Compassion and Choices website. I put it in the link so that you can easily access it. Just to scroll to the top, we are at the Dementia End of Life Care section of the website. There's all kinds of good jazz. I'm sorry for, people get motion sickness while I scroll, but we're going to come down here to tools and resources and click the Dementia Values and Priorities tool. Ta-da! So this is super easy. It takes you through step by step. We're actually going to run through it today, just so you can see what it looks like and maybe have questions answered today so that you can make this tool really easy for you and your loved ones. Let's go ahead and get started. So hopefully this isn't populated from earlier when I tested to make sure it was working. The first question is going to pull up, and I'll pull this to the side so y'all can see it. I have been diagnosed with dementia and I'm still of sound mind and have the ability to make this decision. Or in this case, I have not been diagnosed with dementia. I want to make my wishes known now. So we're going to click that one, hit next. So this is a really nice understanding what's to come. The questions are really to get you in the mindset of what will probably happen. These are all fairly commonplace occurrences with people with mid to late state dementia. And hard as it may be to think about it, it's good to know what you feel like in this moment would be good for you if you were at that stage. So this is all about defining care preferences. Every question of the 15 questions is going to have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options. This first question, I have forgotten everything about my past, but still recognize those closest to me. The first one, I want to live as long as possible. So that means that we are going to do CPR. We are going to go to the hospital. We are going to do surgeries if it's going to make life a little bit longer. All of those things are going to happen. Second one, I want no life-saving treatment. We're going to stick to comfort, but we are going to get antibiotics. We are going to get heart medications to make sure that we're living our life to our best. Keep me comfortable, and then stop or avoid other treatments that are preventing me from dying. So we are not going to do antibiotics. We are not going to do heart medications, no IV fluids, but we're going to be extremely comfortable in still eating, drinking, participating in activities of daily life with probably a lot of assistance. And then the last one, keep me comfortable while stopping all treatments and when withholding food and water so I can die peacefully. That's a really hard one. And I think this is why you need to do this with a loved one. Having this written down on a piece of paper is going to be kind of a shock if your family has never seen it before, but it's really important that you have that conversation of, if I've answered, keep me comfortable without food or water for a question, they need to know that's your wish. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And then the other option, which is what I'm going to do for this exercise, is I don't want to influence any of your opinions. Everybody has different feelings. I'm always going to choose this does not apply to me for today. So I'll run through the rest of these just so you can see the questions. We won't talk in depth about the options or discuss. But second one, I'm able to live according to my spiritual beliefs, which is food preferences, meditating or praying, attending services. Again, same 5 options. I no longer recognize my loved ones, still smile and happy in my own world. See, we're just cruising right through. No longer recognize my loved ones. More often than not, I seem unhappy, sad, or anxious. Suffering mentally from anxiety, and you are not able to control it with medication, which I think is an important one for somebody with dementia. The way the brain is wiring differently with dementia, it can make it very hard to treat some of the behaviors with medications. I'm angry or violent, but with medications, I'm okay. I'm angry or violent and is not controlled with medications. Again, that brain is a tricky minx, and medications don't always work for treating some of those behaviors. I can no longer communicate with my loved one through words. This one kind of bothers me because I'm a big gal in body language. So make sure if you want to add an addendum, you always include that, which we'll talk about later. I can no longer feed myself. I can no longer bathe myself. I can no longer toilet myself. I can no longer dress myself. The only option for me is to care for me in a nursing home. I no longer seem interested in food, but I will swallow if a spoon is held to my lips. And the last one, I am unable to leave my bed. So those are the 15 questions that Compassion and Choices has already put into the programs that you can run through and kind of get a good idea of what might be to come and what you would want. This one is kind of nice. So before we move on, it's going to ask, add anything else that you want for treatment. So regardless of my physical and mental state, I would like the following treatment. For me, I think I have a service dog. So I'm going to say, regardless of what's going on in my life, I want to receive dog therapy. So any kind of, pet therapy, anything that's usually available in nursing homes and things like that. Wow, spelling is hard on Saturday. This is another good one. You can personalize it. So you can add your own markers. So just click that orange button. This could be anything. It could be more basic, kind of like the ones we went through with the toileting and bathing. But I had an oddly specific one. I no longer enjoy my morning coffee. And we'll just say for this one, keep me comfortable. So that way you can add this marker. Ta-da! And that's going to be added on. So it's going to give you a cute little review of everything we've gone through. That marker that I added at the top, and then here are the answers to the 15 questions below. And then another really nice thing is that they do combinations, because we want to make sure that if a weird occurrence is happening, we have as much info as possible to help our loved ones make an informed decision for us based on our preferences. So I tend to think of this one as, more positive focused and maybe more negative focused. So, for example, I've forgotten everything about my past, still recognize those closest to me. I'm suffering from anxiety. Nope, not that one. Still smile. So I no longer recognize my loved ones, still smile in my own world. For this one, keep me comfortable. If I remember my loved ones and I'm a happy clam, I am a-okay hanging out wherever I'm hanging out. So you want to save that combination. And then you can add another one. So as I mentioned, that first one is kind of positive. I'm having a good time. I'm happy. But this one, I'm angry. It's not controlled with medication. I'm unable to leave my bed. I no longer seem interested in food. I'm a big food girl. I'm probably going to say, start letting me die peacefully. I start withholding the food so that I can get on to my next journey. Ta-da, we've now created 2 combinations, one more positive focus, one more negative. You can create as many combinations as you'd like. And we're getting to the end here. So patient information, put in your name, put in your email as much as you want, all of that good jazz can get added to the Compassion and Choices email list. Wow, wow, wow. On this next page, is there someone you trust to carry out your wishes? So healthcare proxies. The really important thing about this page, make sure it matches your MDPOA that you already have written. It's going to be really awkward if it's a totally different human. I know for me, after my accident, I actually created an MDPOA and my mom is still on it. If I develop dementia, my mom will probably not be here anymore. So I want to make sure that that's updated and that they match. And you can add an additional one too. So this allows for at least 2, and I think you can even exclude an individual. This is also really important. We all have that wacky human in our life that we love so much and may have a big mouth and may have different opinions than us. This is where you can say, please don't let this person make any choices for me because they're not going to represent who I am. Again, it's going to have you review it. I am driving Compassion and Choices website crazy today because I'm not inputting any information. And then voila, you can download your customized document. So this gives you a whole lot of options. You can view it, download it, email it, all kinds of good jazz. You can immediately email it from this website to your loved one. Hopefully that healthcare proxy you put on there. But to show y'all, here's what it looks like. So I filled this out prior to today, but this is what the dementia provision is going to look like. It's an addendum to what you already have existing. As Sue mentioned, it is not a legal document, but it is an extraordinary gift to your loved ones to help them make decisions when that time comes. So it's going to review everything that it's already reviewed with you probably 4 times by now, of the keep me comfortable and stop treatment, keep me comfortable with withholding food, whatever you may have included, and as well as the combinations. The next page is the patient information. So there's me, there's my husband, there's my mom. Again, probably going to have to update this eventually. And on the last page, there's the signature. So just like the MDPOA in Colorado, no notary, no nothing is really needed, just that person of sound mind signing this document. But it does help to have a witness. And luckily, Compassion and Choices adds those places so that you can input signatures for witnesses. And just because some docs are a little goofy, I would suggest getting a notary, but it is not necessary. And that is the whole tool. The whole kit caboodle. Just in the presence of time, I'm gonna let Miss Kim present next. But again, this is all just an addendum to help you make good decisions. There are a lot of shifts and changes in humans when they develop dementia, and it is really, really hard as the loved one to have to decide at these certain milestones, what should we do? We are always tempted to keep our loved ones around longer, but it is such a huge relief to know exactly what the person wants. With that, we'll save questions for the end, and I'll let Miss Kim knock it out of the park with medical aid and dying.
So let me ask you a question. Would it be better to save questions to the end, Sue, or do you think we should just go into those now in this section?
Why don't we take a few minutes for questions for Katie Sue so people don't have to remember?
Okay.
Talking about dementia. People don't have to remember what their questions are for later. Fred, you've got your hand up.
Yes. Could you return to the second page of the generated form?
Sure. Oh, come on, Katie Sue. Why isn't this working? This one?
Yeah, at the top. No, sorry, second. Oh, first page then.
So this is the first page.
Right. Okay.
Second page is information.
No, I want to look at the 2 bulleted lists on the first page.
Oh, sorry. These.
Okay. No, that just well, okay. So the first set of bullets is any one of the following, just one. Okay. And the second really should, by the way it was constructed, should be all of those are true. Is that correct?
That's what it looks like.
So, and this is personalized for me. You guys get to learn a little bit about Katie Sue. As you can tell, I've been around dementia a lot. I did not choose any of the life-saving treatments, give me the medicine. I just want to be comfortable. So if you had chose those other ones would be listed. But for the ease of this document, which I appreciate, it's only going to do the ones that I selected.
Right, got it. I'm not entirely happy with the prefatory wording, but since you can download it as a doc file, you can change it any way you want.
Correct, yeah, which I think is a really nice thing.
Yep, thank you very much.
I think you're also asking, when you look at the first part, if you're experiencing one of the following, when you look at the second part, it's hard to say, do all of those have to be present in order for you to, it's like when not recognizing your loved one's really different than not being able to be your bad. So is that looks more like a list of all of those have to be present, because the first one says, if I'm experiencing just one of the following.
And that's a good point, Kim. I would definitely read it with the loved one who's going to make the decision to say, what does this mean to you? And if they don't say what you want, rewrite it in that Word doc so that you can get it the way you want it.
Right. Great.
Cool.
And I appreciate people using the little hand button
I
to
like the
raise their
hand.
hand because we can't, none of us can see the whole group of people. So I see that Gail has her hand up. Go ahead, Gail.
Hi, thanks. And thank you for putting this on. It's been tremendously helpful. I had to leave the room for a minute, so forgive me if I'm repeating something. But my understanding is, in general, that this dementia document at this stage in our evolution, if you could call it that, is not legal. And yet I've also been having this issue. I used to be with Kaiser, and they have all this documentation set up, as you may know, that was all filled in. I left Kaiser, and for some reason, none of that stuff transferred. I don't even know if it's legal. So I just want to, is this something that I could send my doctor? Is there any reason to do that? Or is it just?
No, I think it's a great idea to bring it to your doctor, to have them review it. They can sign it and say, you know, this person was of sound mind when they wrote this. Again, that's just kind of a nice gift for the family member when the time comes to say, you know, a doc said that she was with it when she put this together.
Mhm.
And if these things are happening, obviously your loved one is still, you made them the healthcare proxy, they're going to make that decision, but knowing what to do can make it really easy. So I would definitely bring it to your doctor if you have it completed.
Okay, I think that's it. Thanks very much.
And Gail, you can include that with your advanced care directives that are uploaded at in your hospital system also.
Well, when you say hospital system, they couldn't seem to find anything. I was horrified to see that. And then they finally emailed back and said, oh, we see a couple of things that you must have done through Kaiser. So I don't know where this is in the system. This is, I've got Medicare supplement. So I don't know, I sort of naively thought that maybe they'd really be on top of it, but clearly it's, you know, buried in the lower file drawer or something.
Right. And some of the systems are better than others, the EMR systems with the different hospitals. I think your best bet is to just make sure that your power of attorney and your alternate powers of attorney have a copy of this along with your other documents, because it's mainly for their purpose. It's mainly to support them in making decisions for you. And then if need be, if there's any contention or whatever, they can take it to the hospital and say, look, she took the time to write this out. This is why we're making this particular treatment decision.
Correct.
Okay, so in my case, it's Boulder Community Hospital, a pretty big deal here. Can I call somebody at the hospital and say, hey, can you check my record and tell me if it's there and what you have and what you don't have?
Yes, you can. And they now have a really good advanced care planning section of their patient portal for you to be able to upload all these things.
Oh, well, I will definitely, for some reason, the doctor's office never told me about that. That's good to know.
Yeah, and this might be the hospice gal in me. In hospice, we definitely tell people to have their most form, that break green form, on their refrigerator. I've gone one step further to just having your whole file on that refrigerator. Just have a little clear slip with a magnet, stick anything that you think is pertinent to your healthcare. So if you're getting wheeled to the hospital, they can grab it real quick because that's what they're trained to do, is grab that most form. That way it's already going to be on your body once you're headed to the hospital or whatever may happen.
Right.
I also don't trust technology, which is why I always have hard copies.
I think, yeah, both is the way to go. And it's important to ask your agents, your powers of attorney and alternates, what they prefer, you know, how they prefer to be able to access your documents. Because it's not really about, again, it won't be about you at the time. It'll be, if it's a young person, they'd rather find it in the cloud, or someone else who'd rather have paper. So.
Ooh,
Thanks
Jim
a
and
lot.
Judy. I love the power team.
Jim and Judy, did you guys have a question?
Yes, I'd like to know what the doctor uses to determine that and give you a diagnosis of dementia.
They use a variety of tests. Some of it, you could be sent to a specialist and a neurologist to do a variety of, you know, almost full day tests of cognition, physical tests. But some of them, as a social worker, I even complete. So there's one called a BIMS. The BIMS just goes through and asks some questions about orientation. You know, what's today's date? Can you remember 3 words? Can you recall those 3 words after we do a word test? That's kind of the simple one that we use for later and mid-stage dementia to show how much orientation a person has. Another test is called the slums. A slums test is much more advanced. Some people can cheat on the BIMS because they may have dementia, but they remember the answers to this one test. So the slums is one that's much harder for people to cheat, as it were, and requires, orientating yourself to a clock. You have to pick up a piece of paper off the floor. Somebody with dementia has a really hard time with depth perception and hand-eye coordination. So those are some of the things they start to test, but every doctor is different depending on what you may have. If you had a stroke, it's obviously going to be a little bit different.
Okay, so my depth perception is a problem now.
That's just you.
Because I have one eye.
And they look at the whole person. I think that's what's important to find in a doctor, is someone that looks at the whole body and your whole medical history. If you're missing an eye, obviously depth perception is not going to be an indicator of dementia. There's also an entirely different training that we could do on normal aging versus aging with dementia. Normal aging is still very scary, even if you don't have a dementia diagnosis. And it's important to know what's normal. What does that mean? Versus what could be some kind of brain decline.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to note, Fred had clarified, Fred is an attorney, clarified that when I said that the dementia directive is not legal, that's not the same as it's not legally enforceable. That's actually the proper terminology. It's not legally enforceable.
Thanks, Fred. Any other questions? Should we bop along to Kim? If you're like me, if you're worried you're going to forget and you do have a question, write it down. I already wrote down a bunch of questions for you guys.
Or pop it in the chat. And we'll have more time for questions and answers at the end also.
We'll make sure we do. Okay.
All right, Kim.
Okay. Hi. So Katie Sue and I are both volunteers with Compassion and Choices, and I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can so we have time for questions. Compassion and Choices is, when they say an advocacy group, they're the group that basically goes into the states that are trying to pass this and work really hard, not only with the people, but work with legislation. And I have seen them take these issues before the courts, and they are tough. It is tough to get this in a state because we have a culture that, number one, doesn't want to talk about death. Yeah, but also the idea of moving outside of a doctor doing everything is really hard for a lot of people. So if you go on their website, they actually have a page that is specifically around Colorado. Okay. And there's a lot of data there, but their whole website is really valuable. So medical aid in dying, I think it was first passed, the first state was in Oregon, and it was 25 years ago, something like that. And it was at that point called Death with Dignity. This is at the point where the rest of the country, depending on where you are on the scale, it was either death with dignity or assisted suicide. And that contrariness is still going on. We still have people who are very opposed to it, usually for religious reasons, sometimes because they feel protective of developmentally delayed people. And actually that's well, I'll talk about that in a minute. So we now have 10 states and Washington, D.C. that have passed it. There are a couple on the roster for this year's. It almost never passes a state the first time around. And Massachusetts is up, and Massachusetts is 40% Catholic. So we'll see what happens. So there's a lot of conflict with religious organizations, particularly. So our law passed in 2017. It actually passed in December and went into effect like 6 weeks later, which blew the whole state out because there was no time for doctors, for people to really understand what was going on, to get policy statements in place. So we were sort of chaos. Still, we have followed the track that almost every other state has. And it's a very slow progression as we get more comfortable and more resources. So this eligibility requirement is almost the same in every state, but some states are trying to make it a little easier. And it was all put into place to protect people. So we had safeguards so no one would be in a situation where they might change their mind the next day or someone might take advantage of them. So in every state, you have to be of legal age, 18. You have to have a terminal diagnosis, and these are Medicare rules. So it's the same kind of a diagnosis as hospice. You have to look like you're going to be dying within 6 months to get but it comes out of Medicare is what I'm saying. It wasn't a decision made specifically on medical aid in dying. Resident of Colorado, it takes a little while. There's been a new law passed. We'll see what it means. They call it medical tourism. We'll see what it means when people start wanting to come to Colorado a lot more than they do now. People try to move to a different state so they can use medical aid in dying. It's not that easy. Mentally capable of making a decision. The two probably the diciest pieces here are having decisional capacity, because as we said with dementia, if you don't have decisional capacity, these are both decisions that are supposedly not available to you. And what's interesting is that Compassion and Choices does a lot with this. It's actually, these are based on what they call the Ulysses contract. And if you remember Ulysses, I think he was Greek. He was on his way home from a war, and they were going to go through this beautiful passage where the sirens were singing. But when you listen to the sirens sing, you go crazy. But he wanted to hear them. So he said to his crew, strap me to the mast and put wax in your own ears. And no matter what I say, do not stop me. And so that idea of letting me make a decision now and do not stop me is deep in the dementia problem, because when somebody says, God, in 6 months, if 5 years from now, if I can't be happy, if I can't smile, we won't honor it if they have dementia. But in a lot of these documents, they are trying to put in there, and in Canada and several other places, look, I don't care if I have dementia or not. I'm telling you right now what I want. So this is a big deal. Probably the two most contentious parts of this and the Dementia Directive are helping somebody who is not capable, or we think is not capable of making a decision. And one of the things we know, and we talk about the populations that use this, is that some people are choosing to lose a couple of months of life rather than lose capacity and not be able to do this. That's one of the biggest ethical issues. Probably the biggest one now is the ability to self-ingest the medication. This is what is the difference between medical aid in dying and euthanasia. We do not live in a country where we will let a doctor help us. And the countries that do, it's quite humane, actually. Wouldn't you like to have your doctor there? Somebody who's been involved with you, who knows you. One of the issues, again, in Colorado is that sometimes families are doing this on their own without medical help. And it's disruptive, and it's ethically wrong, and it creates a lot of trauma. So those are the two things, the mental capacity and the ability to take the medication on their own, that are really problematic with this law. And they were definitely put in there to protect vulnerable populations. We as a culture have made the choice to lean that way, rather than to assume that people who made decisions before can actually might agree with them. When Katie Sue was talking earlier, one of the things that's nice about that directive is we often think that these directives are about stopping something. Take me off life support, don't let me, blah, blah. But that directive actually starts with, I want to do everything to keep my life. And so Compassion and Choices is particularly focused on all of end of life care, not just the make sure I don't get, or make sure that you can't stop me. So anyway, that's pretty much the same in every state with a little bit of variation. The self-ingestion, as I said, has been problematic because people with dementia, people with ALS, movement disorders, things where they're not going to be able to self-administer, are literally having to make decisions about whether or not they want to do it now, or what actually is that line. So at the very beginning, when medical aid in dying was, first established, it was like, well, you have to take it orally. And the more familiar we get with this, the doctors are learning legally they can be more creative and really address different situations. If someone has stomach cancer and they're not going to be able to absorb, you can actually use administer it rectally or through a feeding tube. So there's been a lot of work done to help people who are trying to, I don't want to say circumvent the law, but to be able to use the law. We're getting a lot more sophisticated at it. So to become eligible is one thing. All that basically says is, okay, I've got the conditions here. Now I have to go in and actually test. You can go to a doctor with that set of requirements, and then they move you through a process. This is, again, designed to protect people. You have to have 14 days between your first request and your second request, 2 oral, 1 written. And a doctor has to certify these things, that you're terminally ill and you have capacity. And then a second doctor has to back those 2 things up. Yes, they are terminally ill, and yes, they have capacity. If there's a question of capacity, you have to have a psych eval. If there's no question, it just takes those 2 doctors. In some states, they are shrinking that 2 weeks because there are people who die before they can actually get the medication. once you have, well, so actually this is different. Yeah, once you have qualified, that's different than being eligible. You can get the medication. Medicine has to be created at a compounding pharmacy. You can't just walk into one of your regular pharmacies. And I think there are now 7 in Colorado. So it's a lot of work to actually find a doctor, make the decision, learn enough about the process. People have had heartbreak when they think they know about the process. They go in to talk to their doctor about it. They think that's the first visit. The doctor says, no, it isn't. And then they have to start all over. So I'm going to ask Katie Sue when we circle back around to talk about the things we've been trying to do to make this easier for people in Colorado. Right now, 2017, I think we had 72 people use it. 2021, we had 771. And that's cool because it looks like a big number. It's still like 0.5%, of the people who are really using it. So a lot of the hoopla is more a theoretical fear rather than that the masses are going to be, killed because of using it. And it's a difficult process to go through. So what has been lucky in many states, and Colorado is very conservative about this, California has been really open, is that many hospices here are not going to prescribe for you. They are very, very tight about it. But we have several really large health systems that are set up so that if you have a physician in that system, and this is where I'm going to leave Katie Sue till the end. If you have a physician in that system, even if your doctor doesn't want to prescribe, there will be somebody else in the system that will do it. And so that's really what we would like ideally is for each person's physician who knows them to be on board, to be able to help them legally and ethically. It's the same as it is in all of medicine. If your doctor doesn't want to help, there's no reason or way that we should be trying to force them to do that. And so the next best thing, honestly, is to try to find a doctor who at least knows you or is in the system that's not going to fight with you. So the MAID program at Denver Health is probably the most exceptional program in the world. That's why I want to circle back to Katie Sue. And Boulder Community Health all have these systems where if you are a patient in there, they will help you find a doctor. Some of them are better than others. They will navigate the whole system for you because this is a very siloed system. And so even if you get the physicians to try to find the medication sometimes means that the family is still doing a lot of work. And our goal is to make this seamless so that you can think about it, you can get really good information about it, hopefully early enough that you can act on it, because even though the law says 14 days, this takes months to prepare for. Very few people actually make up their mind, get the medication, and can use it right away. And a huge number of people actually never use the medication. We call it psychological insurance. They just want to have it in their hands so that they know that they're not going to be victims to the medical system. And the other thing that we found that's interesting is that we assumed at the beginning that people were going to be primarily wanting to use medical aid in dying as a chance to exit when they could because of high pain levels. That has not proved to be true in any of the states. It's been about quality of life. It's been about my personhood. I no longer feel like I can enjoy my life. I am not who I used to be. And as with all things end of life, those are very often quality of life decisions, not medical decisions. So for a 90-year-old man who cannot toilet himself, that is a valid quality of life decision that is really important to honor. So this is just the most recent step in trying to create patient choices that match a number of situations. And it's very different in other countries right now, but it's tough. It's happening fast. I think we're going to end up with maybe 2 states a year that are passing this. And so everyone is really protected. People who don't want to participate, people who are in religious organizations, but it's giving access to those who want to participate. The end.
Thank you, Kim. That's the fastest I ever heard you talk.
I had 2 cups of coffee this morning because I knew I only had 15 minutes.
Okay, well, we've got another 15 minutes to just field questions, curiosities of both speakers. And I'm going to keep clicking mute because I've got construction going on upstairs that they told me they were going to do quietly. Anyway, questions. And you know what, you can just unmute and jump in if you like, or put your hand up in the little hand thing.
I'll come back to this, but I'm going to stop sharing just for a second so I can pull something else up.
Okay.
Oh, and Katie Sue, I really want you to talk about what Denver Health does.
Okay.
Literally one of the most
Yeah.
unique programs in the country.
Yeah, if someone has one question that they want to ask while I get my little sheet pulled up, I'd happily tell you about it. Or you can just wait, whatever you want.
Well, I think that what comes up with medical aid and dying is the irony of it is that you have to already be dying.
Mhm.
That's like really what it boils down to, and be very aware of the fact that with dementia or any other kind of neurological disease like ALS or MS or Parkinson's, the trajectory for actual death is much longer than 6 months. So that's what Kim was saying. I'm just clarifying what Kim was saying is that you have to make, if you're going to try to access medical aid in dying, you have to do that, access it earlier in your trajectory than maybe you would prefer.
Mhm, mhm.
Because later on you're not able to self-administer and you won't be of sound mind and all that. And actually with dementia, it's not an option at all.
Yeah. And that's, people have said to us that the hardest part was the fear that they felt after they'd made a decision that they were going to lose capacity before they had the chance to use it. That confusion and fear in that time has been the hardest thing for many, many people.
So I got my ducks in a row so I can share. As I mentioned, as of this past Monday, I became the medical aid and dying program coordinator for Denver Health. Kim was very kind. I agree that we have the best program, but obviously I'm biased. What Denver Health discovered, we initially were just for our own patients. If a Denver Health patient wanted medical aid and dying, we provided the very easy system for them to access the medication and the legislation. However, many of you know, Denver Health likes to serve a diverse population, and we found that people that maybe weren't in our system wanted to access it. And who are we to say that they shouldn't be able to access it? Because it was a lot of hoops, a lot of phone calls, a lot of very hard conversations. And if you're already terminally ill, which the law requires, that is a lot to tax on the body. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible while still following very strict rules to follow the legislation. So what the MAID program at Denver Health does is me, Katie Sue, and Sky O'Neill, if y'all know that name, she and I screen people, we do the inquiries. Denver Health then sets up the 2 doctors. So to access medical aid and dying, you have to have your first appointment with one doc saying that, yes, I'm of sound mind. Yes, I'm terminally ill. And yes, I understand I will die if I take this medication. We provide the form for the written request saying that, again, the same information, you have to have 2 witnesses. And then we also provide the consulting doctor. That is huge. If you don't have access to a doc, it makes it harder to find a second one, much less the first one. So we provide both doctors, and everything is done, via Denver Health. You just have to show up, which is kind of nice. The other really nice thing is, an unfortunate silver lining of the pandemic, as demonstrated by this call today, is everyone knows how to use Zoom now. So we actually do everything virtually. Again, that was a huge access issue. Back in the day, you were required to come into Denver Health, downtown Denver, terminally ill, and attend an appointment. That's a lot for the human body to have to do when you're feeling great. So we do everything virtually, which means that we can help people that live in Southern Colorado, the Western Slope, rural areas that don't have doctors that understand or support the medical aid and dying legislation so that they can still have access to the law. And then finally, we dispense the medication. It's dispensed through our pharmacy, our discharge pharmacy. However, we do have connections with local pharmacies in Pueblo and other parts of the country so that they can develop it there. We also have a partnership where we can mail the medication, courier it. I don't know what the right phrase is. But we get the medication from Denver to the Western Slope, again, so that nobody has to strain themselves to get to the medication. We also will attend the death. A lot of hospices have different rules, just like the law, of where they can or can't be in the room, they can or can't attend, depending on what your hospice allows. If you want someone from the medical field there that knows exactly what MAID does, myself, Dr. Carrie Mason, Sky O'Neill, we will come and we will sit with you while you take your medication so that you're not alone and you're not pressuring your family to carry that burden. So all in all, I think it's the first program of its kind in the country that goes start to finish. Right now, it's completely out of pocket. It's totally out of pocket, just reminding everybody. The total cost for Denver Health is about $800. If you're a Kaiser patient, Kaiser pays for it. So use Kaiser. Some private insurances are starting to cover some of the prices, but for the most part, it's out of pocket because this is not a federally funded bill. Medicare, Medicaid cannot pay for medical aid in dying. We do have a small foundation. If anybody today is interested in donating, we would love to have you because again, Denver Health, we serve a diverse population. I don't believe legislation is good if it doesn't access all. And for it being out of pocket, that's garbage. That means a lot of our population can't access it. So if you feel inclined, let me know. Happy to direct you to donating. But I also wanted to share this one sheeter I developed. Share screen. What do I want to share? This one. So this is the one sheeter I created for Denver Health. It outlines what Kim identified, the qualifying criteria for us to even start an inquiry with our program. We always recommend that somebody's enrolled in hospice. About 98% of our patients are enrolled in hospice. I think it's important to note that our clinic does not do the terminal diagnosis. So if you do not have a terminal diagnosis, we cannot see you. So we do not cover that part. The patient must make the referral. All questions go to that voicemail, which I check every day. And then accessing the meds usually takes about 3 weeks from the first call to the dispensing the medications. That's how we attend the appointments. Cost is $800, the most expensive part being the medication. And this is the medication that Denver Health uses right now. So the medications are always changing. Back in the day, it was just a very large amount of morphine. There's been some other medications done around, but we currently use this DDMA-PH. So it's digoxin, diazepine, morphine, amitriptyline, fun names, right? And phenobarbital. All of these are meant to help shut down the different parts of your body. So when someone takes MAID, it's a powder. It comes in an old school pharmacy bottle. You mix it with 4 ounces of liquid. We actually suggest alcohol, so you get your one last cocktail if that's your jam. You drink it in 90 seconds, and within 5 minutes, you're in a deep, deep, deep sleep. Some people pass as quickly as 10 to 15 minutes in. Some people pass after 6 hours, but you almost immediately fall asleep. Oh, thank you, Henry. And then it's essentially an accelerated dying process, which is why we really like hospice to be involved. My very important note is that the diagnosis is always going to be your terminal diagnosis. Medical aid in dying is not listed on your death certificate. This is written into the law so that you are protected. Your estates, your insurance, all of that good jazz is protected, even if you take medical aid in dying. And that's that. So that was a very, high arching overview of our program at Denver Health. Similar situations are at the other clinics at UC Health, at Kaiser, at Boulder Community. But this is the one I can talk about. So that's what I shared.
Katie, Sue, will you be able to make that available for us to send out to the people who are attending today?
I'm not sure. I'll have to ask Denver Health if I can send it out, but if I can, I will.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
And there was also a question about the slide set.
Oh, you can definitely have the slides.
Okay, all right. So I can send those on to people. Okay, any other questions? Two very disparate topics. Trajectories of end of life considerations for those.
I'd like to make one statement, because the conflict between the range of people, the people who call this assisted suicide, it is very clear what the difference is between medical aid in dying and suicide. And actually in our state, it's actually written into the law that insurance wise, everything, this is not suicide. And the difference is that people, very simply, the people who want to die by suicide, they want to get out of here. They're not necessarily dying at all. They don't want to be here. People who are using medical aid and dying often don't want to die, but they don't have a choice. So there's a real clear distinction between the people who are accessing this.
Right. Yeah, people are choosing which way they're going to die. They're not choosing between life and death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue, there was a comment in the chat, and I don't know if either Kim or Katie Sue can speak to this, but there's a few international organizations. One is called Exit International, and Denzel had a question about that, as well as I know there's Dignitas in Switzerland. If either of the speakers can speak to, or if you're comfortable speaking to these international organizations that provide this service as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. And there's also a national organization, Final Exits.
Mhm.
Yep.
So I would highly suggest reading this book.
I'm
It's
reading
called
it now. Oh my
Yes,
God. Yes.
It's a heartbreaker. So if you just want to cry your eyes out, I recommend this book. But this is written about a woman whose husband utilized Dignitas in Switzerland. It's again a great option. I think that's what Compassion and Choice is, and me as a personal human want people to know about. Again, the prices. So Dignitas is very expensive. Canada just passed a pretty progressive law that allows people with psychiatric diagnoses and a variety of other things to access medical, like death with dignity. I think they're great programs. I would let Kim talk to it more, but I just wanted to make sure everybody, if you really love this topic, check out this book.
So let me say this really quickly. All of these organizations have the same mission. They have different goals with them. So for example, Switzerland will entertain. You can go over there with a mental illness. You can go over there non-terminally. That doesn't mean that they'll help you, but they will entertain it. They don't start with, here's the wall. They start with, come to us and talk. And then they make decisions based on that. So almost all of them have, some of them, like Final Exit, people think of it as really dicey. There are ways that it could be assisting someone with the suicide. And so they have pieces in place, because assisting someone with the suicide is still a capital crime, not capital crime, but it's still a crime some places. You can be in prison for it. So some of them ride the ragged edge. But when Jack Kevorkian started doing this, if anybody, the only people I can see on this, you're old enough to remember Jack Kevorkian. You're probably old enough to remember Queen for a Day. I see people from Queen for a Day land out there. Anyway, everybody had a hissy fit because of what he was doing. Was it legal? Borderline. Was it ethical? Some people said no. Was it something that started this whole movement by saying patient choice is really important? Yeah. So everything has its place, I think, in this, regardless of where you are in the world. There are different choices in the world based on how that culture operates, but they all have the same end point, which is patient choice.
Right. Right. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, a question for those of you more knowledgeable about Dignitas and some of those international organizations. It was mentioned that when you die from medical aid in dying here in Colorado, your diagnosis that you were given as terminal is what goes on the death certificate. Do you know if that is also true using the international organizations such as Dignitas?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't either. That is a really good question.
Yeah, that's a good
You get
question.
$10.
It has a lot of
Speakers.
lot of implications for insurance issues.
Mhm.
Very big. So I think we need to answer that one.
Yeah, I will definitely find out.
Yeah. Though and maybe if Fred's still on, if you could clarify, my understanding is that the clause that in a life insurance policy that disqualifies you because of suicide is in most states the first 2 years after the policy is taken out, and in Colorado it's only 1 year. So after those time periods are up, a death by suicide, it does not negate your life insurance.
If you're terminally ill, you can't get life insurance anyway.
But that's a very good point. Yeah. But am I correct about the time periods there, Fred?
I do not know.
Oh, okay.
No, they are limited because people always assumed that they weren't.
Right.
Yeah.
I also see this question from Jocelyn. It looks like you addressed it, Sue, but correct. Dementia generally is not a terminal diagnosis that gets you eligible for hospice. To have a hospice diagnosis, you typically have to have senile degeneration of the brain or Alzheimer's. It's very often that we have people with dementia on service, but they're usually on for CHF, cancer, COPD, things of that nature, and their cognitive loss is a comorbidity.
So in other words, they're very far advanced with the illness, is what you're saying. That the requirements to get into hospice are very advanced dementia in terms of their functionality, their ability to swell. You know, it's not that they've had it for a long time. They have to get to the point where they're actively dying because they're physically breaking down. It's not the
Correct.
diagnosis.
Correct. That's why,
correct.
yeah, just general dementia doesn't qualify.
Isn't it the case that you can't get onto hospice without a 6-month diagnosis?
Correct. But I would like to clarify that it's 6 months if the disease takes a natural course. Some people stay on hospice for 4 years and they are entirely eligible the whole time because they always have that little drop. So when people come onto hospice, I really like to remind them, this does not mean they're going to die in 6 months. They could die tomorrow. They could die a year from now, but it's if the disease takes a natural progression. And people more often than not do better on hospice because suddenly they have a whole team coming to wherever they call home, getting that good meds, the good equipment, all covered by Medicare. So usually people thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sometimes
no,
people
I
graduate.
understand that, but isn't being in hospice presumptive from your point of view that there's already a 6-month diagnosis?
Oh,
Yeah.
presumptive for medical aid in dying. Yeah.
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 So the doctor who qualifies you for medical aid in dying has to look at you the same way you would if you were in hospice. And as Katie Sue said, it's gotten worse. I mean, a lot of doctors don't understand end-of-life trajectories. The most famous study, doctors who don't understand end-of-life tend to prognosticate 3.5 times more time than you have. So they might say to you, oh, you look fine, you'll be here in 3 months and you might die in 3 days. So that's been a really issue with getting people into hospice. And then as Katie Sue said, they come in, they're still dying, but they don't die as quickly as thought. We just recertify them every 6 months with Medicare.
No.
I
So
would
it's
also
very-
add that just because you're on hospice does not mean you're eligible for medical aid in dying.
Right.
I know that's a gray area. Denver
Mhm.
Health, we've really had to tighten up our screws recently. We've had some people that just really aren't going to die in 6 months or less, and our doctors cannot certify that. We've actually just made a rule that we cannot prescribe MAID from our clinic. Other clinics are welcome to do it, but we personally will not accept the terminal diagnosis of protein calorie malnutrition as a terminal diagnosis to qualify them for MAID. Again, that can be dicey. People might not agree with that, but for us, it's just a prognosis where we can't really guess a projection. So we have to make sure that we're protecting ourselves with the law.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I want to add, as far as the hospice piece, I said previously, not all hospices are created equal, and they're not. My daughter's a hospice nurse, and I've been in senior living and the funeral industry and this end of life passion a long time. 2 weeks ago, I had a doctor tell a family member of mine that they're not eligible for a hospice until they have bed sores.
What?
I about lost it. And I wanted to drive to that rehab facility and shake this doctor. Had I not talked to the family first about hospice, she would have said, oh, yes, doctor, you are brilliant and the end all be all, and not pursued hospice. So please question doctors. Kim Mooney's in hospice, Katie Sue, talk to me, Sue Mackey was in hospice. It's a hospice consult. You can have somebody come and visit, and then they can talk to their medical director to see if there's eligibility, if they're no longer seeking curative treatment. But the bed sore thing, a lot of doctors are so uneducated on hospice, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that. I would also
Yep.
suggest, like,
2 weeks ago.
oh my God. So maybe this is just the millennial in me, but I look at Google to find a taco place. Like, why wouldn't you do the same for your hospice? So make sure you're Googling, looking at reviews, calling other families. Like, everyone has unfortunately had an experience with hospice. Do some crowdsourcing. Don't just choose the first one your doctor refers you to.
And we as patients need to be advocates, not just advocates for ourselves, but educators of our physicians
Yeah.
for things that they're unaware of. So-
For Joanne's question, I would highly suggest looking into finding a death doula. So I have been kind of stirring the pot of getting to know the death community here in Denver. There's quite a few death doulas who do just that. They help you access medical aid in dying. They'll help you find a good hospice, and they'll be your voice when you're not feeling well enough to be that voice for yourself. So I would start interviewing them now. I know some death doulas have like clients that they're like, I'm not dying right now, but like in 20 years, you're going to be there for me. Obviously they have backups. Or, I got this diagnosis. I'm not terminal yet, but I just want you in my back pocket. That way they can get to know you and know your preferences early. So I'd highly suggest talking to a death doula and maybe just getting an eval.
Yeah, that's an excellent suggestion, Katie Sue. I realize we're over time. And I know we could continue this conversation for hours, I think. But I'm going to propose that we all get on with our day, except for the board members who will stay on for our financial report. And so we can reinduct Marilyn as our secretary. If anyone is interested in the financial report or membership report, you are welcome to stay on. But Kim, did you have something before I say thank you to you?
Somebody asked if you would put our contact information in the chat before we leave. Or not.
Yeah, I will send that out in an email with the recording, if
Yeah.
that's okay with you too. And any information, like the slide set from Katie Sue, and possibly that DU tool that she created, if it's ethical to do that.
Sue, I just
Sue?
want to thank you. Thank you for doing this, because it speaks a lot of your breadth of knowledge that you even know that these things are out there to talk about. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's exciting to be doing this with for the Funeral Consumer Society, to be doing this and really fulfilling our mission of educating people around end-of-life issues and being able to be wise, not just wise funeral consumers, but just wise around all aspects. So I'll put a plug in for our handbook that is on our website that I just checked, and it's still not up again, darn it. But once it's live, that we have if you take a membership for $20 for 2 years, which is $10 a year, you'll get the membership, the handbook itself, which we usually sell for $20. It's 60 pages of kind of soup to nuts, everything end of life. So it's a really good overview on all aspects of the end of life. And that, like I said, the membership supports this kind of thing that we're doing because we do these for free. And there's an opportunity to donate on the website. And for those who are already members, but they want an updated version of the handbook, they can, or anybody actually can purchase a handbook from the website for $20, paper copy sent to you in the actual snail mail, or for $5, you can get an e-copy of it and either read it online or print it out yourself. So, and one last plug for anybody who wants to join us in our cause. So,
Yeah,
any
Sue?
board members have something else? Yeah, Jim.
I think we want to keep anybody who would be interested in volunteering or potentially being a board member to also stay around for us.
Oh, yes, to stay on the
We'd love
call.
to incorporate them into the fold.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. And there was a comment from, I think, Fred earlier saying that he just really is thankful for the quality of speakers that we have brought forth this morning. And like, just major thank you. You guys were both really awesome. You covered a lot of material in a short period of time and help people understand these two topics and how they apply to them in their lives going forward. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I see some thumbs up. And yeah, I'll put the membership, I'll just put the website in the chat for anybody who still sticks around.
Bye.
Okay, have a good rest of the day, everyone.
You must have made some noise. That's why it came up there, I think. Okay.
All righty. They were great, weren't they?
Hey,
Oh, marvel.
we still have 15, so.
Yeah, so if those of you who are sticking around with us, welcome. unless you're just still trying to figure out where the end button is, which often happens too. But you're welcome. We just have a little bit of business to cover, which is just our financials and our membership and our keeping Marilyn for as long as we can possibly keep her.
If she hasn't resigned.
She's not allowed.
Is the meeting open?
Yeah, let's open the meeting.
You're still recording. Do you want to continue recording this?
No, thank you. I will end. Thanks.